let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll start with the NFL draft and some trade scenarios. Yesterday, I dove into the Buffalo Bills, Steelers swapping the 28th pick for the 20th pick and getting a second-round pick added on to their array of selections and then giving up a fourth round and whether or not that made sense. Today, there's a different one. ESPN's Jordan Reed said that there's a pretty strong belief that the Arizona Cardinals could try to move back into the first round before the end of day one of the NFL draft. Quote, it shouldn't come as a surprise if Arizona gets aggressive and attempts to move up from number 27 for a cornerback on day one. Murphy Bunting is more of a CB2. There's a glaring need for a high upside CB1, and Nate Wiggins and Kool-Aid McKinstry could be day one options for a roster still in the talent collection portion of this rebuild. The Steelers are sitting there at 20. You got to think that McKinstry is definitely going to be there. Wiggins is definitely going to be there. Maybe Terrion Arnold, maybe Cooper DeJean is still floating around. Do you see this as a possibility that the Pittsburgh Steelers could say, hey, you want to move up? Let's come to 20 and see if we can make a move at that point. Do you think that's a real possibility?
I absolutely do. And I mean, looking at the Arizona Cardinals draft picks, I mean, these guys have like 18 draft picks. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but it's not that far off. I mean, I think it's a dozen if I'm looking at it's 10, actually, I think. Yeah, I think it's 10 or 11. And they have like 4 picks in the third round. So if I would absolutely be willing to play ball with the Arizona Cardinals. And I don't think, if you move down from 20 to 27, I don't think the crop of prospects there is going to be that much worse than what you could get at 20, especially for what the Steelers need. Like there's still going to be one of those, there's still going to be guys like, a Tyler Guyton probably down there. Yep. I think, depending on who the Cardinals go for, I mean, one of those corners could still be there. I mean, I think there are a lot of possibilities. There's like one of those receivers, those Texas receivers, Mitchell versus,
Xavier Worthy.
Yeah, like one of those guys will still be there. I mean, it's a different group of prospects that you maybe thought was going to be there, but it is, I think, just as strong a group. Like the difference between 20 and 27 is not that big a deal to me. So yeah. I'm all in on loading up on, a second rounder or a third rounder. Like, I think the Cardinals have the 35th pick in the second round. Like, even if you just end up, getting an extra third from them and then swapping seconds, I think that is, I mean, that might be a lot for just to move up 7 spots, but I think you could start there and then negotiate down if you want to and still get, an extra third round pick and maybe move up in the second round. So I'm all for this, quite honestly.
When it came to the Bills yesterday, the move was the rumored trade was the 20th for the 28th pick. I think the Steelers gave up a 4th, and then they got Buffalo's 2nd as well. And I mean, that was a ridiculous trade. To 27, even if you're just swapping second round picks and then maybe picking up a third round pick, maybe even a 4th round pick, if you can move up that far in the second round and then move back 7 spots, just like you said, like you're looking at a different crop of prospects. But let's say Arizona's there and for some reason Terrion Arnold or Cooper DeJean still on the board. That's their pick. Cool. They're going with one of those. Nate Wiggins is still around. Kool-Aid McKinstry is still around. Chances are, like you said, Tyler Guyton's still there. Armarius Mims seems to be sliding down the boards. Maybe that's a move. You're definitely going to have all of the center prospects, maybe outside of Graham Barton, still available. There are names that could be selected at 27 that you feel pretty good about. Maybe you get a wide receiver. Like you said, maybe they go with the Donnie Mitchell because they really like a Donnie Mitchell. And then you're sitting there at 35. I mean, if you could do whatever you want at that 27th pick, by the time it comes back through, you'll have all of the options available that you were looking at 27. It will not be like but we missed out on this guy. You want to go with Jackson Powers Johnson at 35, he's going to be there. You want to go with Zach Frazier at 35, he's going to be there. Like, I think that the options there are crazy. And then, I mean, worst case scenario is you're sitting there and you have 24 hours at the end of the draft to move up those 4 spots. If you really, truly feel like your guy is still there at the end of the first round, you already have 2 third-round picks. Maybe you add a 4th. You could move up those 4 spots with ease to be the first pick on day 2 or you could use that second, fourth round pick to move up into, maybe add another third rounder, maybe add another second rounder. I just think I agree with you. I think the options that this creates is well worth moving back 7 spots, especially at 20. I feel like 20 is not. Last year when it was 17 and 14, there were options there that were almost potential top 10 pick options. At 20, you're looking at the end of the first round draft guys, and those guys great, but they're all almost at the same talent level when it comes to that 20th pick.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not stressing the 7 spots at all. Like I said, I think, and I mean, we've debated all, off season, the marginal value of a, Graham Barton versus a Jackson Powers Johnson, getting a corner versus getting the tackle that you need. I don't know. Part of me feels like there's no wrong direction to go at pick 20 or 27, quite honestly. And I think that flexibility gives you so much room to really do so many different things. And it opens you up to the point where there's not really a bad, I mean, obviously the pick could be a bust, it could not work out, but at least on draft day, I think it'd be really hard to pick someone at either 20 or 27, especially at 20 that you're like, oh, this guy, I don't really see him fitting in here. I don't think this is going to work. I don't think this is a great pick. Everyone I think has potential that could possibly fall to them at 27. There are just too many. They have too many positions that they need, and there are too many prospects at those positions that they need to feel bad about picking at 27.
If you are sitting there at 20 and say all the corners are gone except for maybe Nate Mitchell and Kool-Aid McKinstry, are you still comfortable making that move to say, and you're going to lose Graham Barton in the process? Are you still comfortable with saying, hey, whatever, we're not going to get a corner in the first round. That's totally fine. We'll move back to 27.
I think I am. I am, because I think if you're able to, do what we talk about, move up in the second round to 35 or get that extra third round pick, a guy like a Max Melton could be in that is much more in that conversation at 35, I think, than he is at 51. And, when you have, 2 or 3 third round picks, you're less worried about, okay, I got to get, a receiver option in the second round or something like that. I think that takes some of the pressure off there as well. And then, I think you still worry about, tackle at that spot. Cause I assume, I don't know, it depends on who you're picking at 27. Because, one of your offensive line spots is gonna, I guess, fall by the wayside. I mean, that's unless you're a real big believer in Cedric Van Pran and you can get him in the third or the fourth round. I think that's the only place you're vulnerable, is that one of your offensive line spots is just it the math is just not going to work out. It's not going to get addressed if you need 2 starter caliber guys at those spots.
Yeah, I agree. But I also think that if you wanted to really work it out and just, I mean, in years past, this isn't a real thought, but with Omar Khan, it is a real thought. If you wanted to go a guy like Tyler Guyton at 27, because I think that fits him a lot better than 20. I think at 20, to take a guy like Amarius Mims or Tyler Guyton that have such big, giant concerns when it comes to their availability. I mean, at 27, that's a whole other ball game. Cool, you could take a risk. Then in the second round, you either draft a center or you draft a corner, and then you maybe trade back. I mean, at 35, you might be able to get a Kool-Aid McKinstry. As crazy as that, that might be an actual option for you. You get a corner, you get a center there, and then maybe you try to move back into the second round and you get the other one, depending on whether or not you win a guy like Zach Frazier, Jackson Powers Johnson, Kool-Aid McKinstry, or Max Melton. You could come back into the second round using some of your picks and try to make a move again, and then boom, you land the third one, and then you still have a third round pick and probably a fourth round pick, because you're probably just going to give up one of each to move back into the second round. And I mean, that's not a bad, that's essentially what they were looking at right now. Only instead of 2/3, it's 2 seconds, and the first second is almost a first round pick. That's not bad.
You mentioned him, but I've seen over the past couple of days Zach Frazier climbing up into first round talk. Are you buying that?
No, I'm not. I think that there's a lot of hype right now, but I think it's a center position. I don't understand how we have the same conversation of you can't draft Graham Barton in the first round, but But
Zach
Frazier's,
Frazier,
yeah, like I don't know how we got here. And I think if the words were Zach Frazier has first round talent, okay, yeah, maybe. But to move up into the first, like I don't see that happening. I could see that happening if like Graham Barton goes at like 15 and then Jackson Powers Johnson goes at 21 to the Dolphins, and then okay, somebody needs a center. Zach Frazier's like at that point, if you're the Steelers and you're sitting there at 27, cool, draft Zach Frazier because you don't want to miss out on that guy. But if that's not like, it would take so much to have the third best center be, even if he was the second best center, be another first. Like that's just so. Creed Humphrey was a second round pick. Like it's just, it doesn't happen. There's no. I don't think it could happen. Maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, yeah, I kept seeing that stuff, and I was like, damn, I mean, how did we get from, Zach Frazier's a surefire, he's the third or fourth best center in this draft, but we're gonna shoot him all the way up into the first round. I don't know. It just seemed like this draft is way too crowded for a third center to go in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's crowded enough that maybe no centers go in the first round, let alone three of them. That's just. And then what, is Jackson Powers Johnson still second? Because at that point, I mean, that's a steal. If you somehow get Jackson Powers Johnson as the third center in this draft class, you should feel pretty good that 5 years from now, people are going to be like, I can't believe that this guy was the third center drafted in that draft class. Crazy times. But no, I'm not buying that. As for a trade with the Cardinals, I'm all in. I think any trade that you proposed about the Pittsburgh Steelers moving back at this point, I'm very much so on board with, just because unless the board falls some sort of crazy way. And I guess this is a good final question before we move on to an in division AFC North trade with the Steelers. Is there a name? Is there a prospect that if he's sitting there, you're not moving out of 20?
I'm sorry. What do you mean? Can you rephrase that question?
Like if there's a player available at 20, Steelers are on the clock. They're getting phone calls. Trade back, trade back, trade back. If there's that, is there one name where you're going, nope, that guy fell, we're drafting him?
I'd say it's Quinion Mitchell. I mean, like he's climbing closer and closer to that top 10, but
yeah,
I still feel like there's a chance that he could fall down to 20. I feel like him, and I guess that, I mean, like Fashanu, maybe, like if Fashanu, Fuaga, like any of those like tackles who are projected to go like top 15, if them or Mitchell fall, then I don't think I'm moving out of 20. But I think those are pretty unlikely scenarios, so I'm not losing sleep over those ones, I would say.
Yeah, I'd say my list is exactly the same. Those three guys. I see mock drafts left and right anymore that Fashanu's going to the Steelers, and I'm like, what? This guy a year ago was like the number one pick in the draft.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I don't understand how we got here, but if you could get him at 20, I mean, you sprint to the podium. I'll toss another name out there. Byron Murphy might be.
Damn, defensive line first round?
I think it's more so how good this guy is and the fact that it's the Steelers. Like they would look at him and be like, well, damn, that's like, you can't, what we could do with that guy would be, like, I think the upside there, but I think that's a sleeper. If it's there.
I mean, I buy some of that. I think there's some logic to like, just take the best player. Like, don't concern yourself as much with, like, I don't know, outside of like really certain scenarios. Like if you get tied up too much into, we need this position, you just handicap yourself a lot. So I think there is a ton of logic to like I can forget what podcast I was listening to the other day, but it was just like people really overthink the idea of just like drafting the best player that's available at your spot. Like sometimes that just works out, like if you just get as many of the best football players as possible at your draft slot, then like you're going to be fine. If you worry too much about fit, then you're just going to talk yourself into knots, and it's not going to be a good time.
No, I agree. The Steelers' philosophy used to be, we're just drafting the best player available. It doesn't matter what position they are. That's how they ended up with TJ Watt. Just by far the best player available. Boom, we're going to go get him. And it works out a lot of the time. And I think that if it sat there and the Steelers were like, I don't know, I think that he would be a name that they'd be like, this guy's got so much talent. I don't understand how he was slept. Because I feel like defensive linemen are so slept on in this draft class that there's, if there might not be one that's drafted in the top 10. That's bonkers. So if he's sitting there at 20, I could add him to the list.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I mean, just like, I was looking at your like defensive lineman in the top 10. I mean, it's really only like Dallas Turner. That's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
And he might go 9th, he might go 10th, he might go 11th.
Yeah.
Like that would be it compared to years past. That's just with the value of an edge rusher. That's nuts. Like it's kind of crazy.